Here's a quick summary of all the games you'll want to check out from the Game Awards that happened a few hours ago. And yes, Todd Howard did appear on stage, but no, he did not announce the Elder Scrolls 6 or Fallout 5, though that recent trailer Easter egg might be hinting at 2027. We'll get to that in a moment though. Let's start out with the first game. Decrepit is a dark fantasy first-person Souls-like, akin to the old-school dungeon crawler games, and it's releasing in 2026. Now the gameplay trailer wastes absolutely no time showing you what this game is about. Wretched undead, brutal melee combat, and at least one poor guy bolted to a wheel. If that's not Dark Souls energy, I don't know what is. The setup of this game is pretty simple, but nasty. You're trapped inside an accursed castle, and every run you do is going to start out in a dingy dungeon cell. You push out, grab whatever loot you can find, and then try to carve a path to freedom. And because this is a roguelike, Souls-like hybrid, you're probably gonna die a lot. But there is a twist that makes this game more unique than other roguelikes. You see, while enemies and encounters randomize every time you die, the medieval castle layout where the game is based never changes. So the shortcuts that you open stay open. The secrets you uncover are still going to be there on the next run for you to take advantage of, and so it's less about bloat and more about mastering your run. And this is a solo indie game, but I'm still very excited for it. I think it's a return to the roots of what makes games fun, but while also modernizing the graphics and having that high production value. That brings me on to game number 2. Warlock Dungeons and Dragons was just revealed by Wizards of the Coast, but the developers made it very clear that this is not a role-playing game like Baldur's Gate 3. They're actually purposely avoiding the tabletop simulation angle. This is a straight-up single-player action-adventure game, asking what if you could just be a warlock in a big fantasy world, casting ridiculous magic all the time, without worrying about initiative rolls or saving throws. So you play as Katri, a warlock who's made a pact with some mysterious otherworldly entity, and because of that, the whole game revolves around magic. Not just press button to cast a fireball, but what the studio is calling immersive expressive magic. I don't really know what that means, but you're going to be slinging spells to fight monsters, solving environmental puzzles, manipulating the world. What they're trying to do here is give you the full fantasy wizard power fantasy without the usual Dungeons and Dragons restrictions. But to be honest with you, I need to see some actual gameplay before I can get excited about this one, so do get subscribed if you want to stay notified. And that brings me on to game 3, The Elder Scrolls 6. Only kidding. But did Bethesda just confirm a release date for The Elder Scrolls 6? Now obviously this statue in the desert was nothing to do with The Elder Scrolls 6 Hammerfell. None of the creatures carved into it really resembled anything from the Elder Scrolls universe anyway, but hey, I get it. We're all desperate for news. Todd Howard does keep saying in interviews though that fans should be patient, but Bethesda did release a trailer for Skyrim Anniversary Edition on Nintendo Switch 2. And yeah, that's got to be the 17th release of Skyrim, and they actually do seem to be self-aware at this point. But during the trailer, there's a very intentional mistake, which could only be an Easter egg referencing when we might be receiving news about the next Elder Scrolls game.
Deleted the list? We need replacements. A whole slayload of them.
I have an idea. Why don't we give everyone Skyrim? For Nintendo Switch 2? Huh.
You son of a cup of cocoa. You just saved Christmas!
Oh my god.
So the elf levels up from level 20 speech skill straight to level 27, and it can be read as the date 2027. So either somebody was extremely lazy or this was very intentional. And this could mean that we either get some more news in 2027 or the Elder Scrolls 6 is actually releasing then. Now, I'm going to say that I think it's probably going to be a gameplay reveal with Todd Howard on stage, sort of showcasing the game as he always does. I highly doubt the game's releasing in 2027. But this is further confirmed in the same trailer, at the end when the Skyrim grandma Shirley Curry makes an appearance. She is also confirmed by Bethesda to be an NPC in The Elder Scrolls 6, and historically, Bethesda have left these hidden hints in their trailers. So we may see something in 2027, but as I said 5 years ago now, I still think the release is probably going to be around 2028. As for Fallout 5, Todd said he had a one-pager on it so far, but my best guess would be 2033, sticking to Bethesda's 5-year game cycle, unless Microsoft lets somebody else develop it, which could make sense considering Todd Howard talked about retiring after the Elder Scrolls 6 releases, in this interview just here, which I'll link down below in the description. Now, if you are wondering what that statue in the middle of the desert was, well, it was actually to do with Larian Studios. And that brings me on to Game 4. Larian Studios, the creators of Baldur's Gate 3, which is based in the world of Dungeons & Dragons, said that they didn't want to work on Baldur's Gate 4. They wanted to do their own thing again. And now they've finally revealed what their own thing is. And they say it's going to be bigger than Baldur's Gate 3. And Larian Studios are not the kind of studio that lies about things. The game is called Divinity, and it has a very dark, gritty cinematic trailer. Also, that statue in the desert, that was a teaser for this game's reveal. And if you didn't know, Larian Studios already produced a D&D-like series called Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2. They're both incredible if you've not played them yet, but this game is just called Divinity. And the studio's CEO, Sven Winkel, says that you don't need to play the original series to play this new game. He said, and I quote, "We're ready to bring everything we've done previously into one place. This marks the beginning of something with more breadth, depth, and intimacy than anything we've created before. We've been building towards this moment ever since we took our fate into our own hands. This is the Divinity we've always wanted to make, and you're going to have loads of fun with it." And obviously you can expect the same turn-based isometric RPG gameplay, and I am personally very glad to see Larian Studios pursuing their own vision. If you want future updates on this project, get subscribed. Next we have Game 5. We got our first look at Diablo 4's new DLC, Lord of Hatred, and it's launching on April 28th, 2026. Overall, Lord of Hatred looks like the biggest Diablo 4 shakeup they've had since launch. There's a new region, we have the returning new Paladin class, full system rewrites, and an endgame that's actually trying to challenge veterans instead of just drip feeding you RNG misery. And this new DLC is going to be the final showdown with Mephisto. But of course, Blizzard couldn't resist adding another twist. So, Lilith is back again. Shock, horror. I guess death is really more of a suggestion in Sanctuary at this point. Now, story-wise, this expansion sends the Wanderer to Skovos, the birthplace of the first civilization and the ancestral home of Lilith and Inaris. It's a mix of volcanic coasts, storm-battered forests, and ancient ruins dripping with forgotten lore. But this time you are stuck forming an alliance of necessity with Lilith herself, because Mephisto's tearing Sanctuary apart from the inside. But let's be honest, the big headline for most players is going to be the gameplay, so let's talk about that. The Paladin class is finally back. A Diablo 2 fan favorite, a hammer and shield brawler with holy light spells and the whole iconic kit. So if you pre-purchase, you actually get to play the Paladin immediately. Blizzard also teased a mysterious second class, apparently strong enough to reshape the battlefield, but they're keeping that under wraps for now, so I'll let you know when I have more info on it. There's also some big reworks too, so the skill trees are getting redesigned with the new class specific variants. Higher level caps are going to happen. There's going to be a new loot filter, finally, so you can target the drops you actually want. There's a crafting overhaul, a new talisman system, the set bonus style endgame builds, and also fishing. Like, why the heck does every developer add fishing into their game? They've also overhauled the endgame, so you've got war plans, which lets you tailor your own endgame path with preferred activities and modifiers, then the echoing hatred, which is the new ultimate gauntlet. for endgame players. And I'm curious to see how all that new content stacks up once it releases. But next we have Game 6. Nobody expected to see the Forest Free reveal, and I'm really excited with where they're taking the series. So the trailer opens with a first-person starship cockpit before everything immediately goes sideways. Systems failure, alarms screaming, and the ship slams into a swamp on some unknown alien planet. Not another remote island, not another forest. No, this is an alien sci-fi world now. And the moment the protagonist steps outside, the place just reeks of dread. Then we see a half-torso mutant crawling out of the water. Yep, we're definitely back in the forest, just with a lot more sci-fi tech. What's wild is how big of a departure this is from the original survival crafting games. So Sons of the Forest actually did tease an alien origin, but an entire new planet. That is very unexpected. Timeline-wise, we know really nothing. This could be a few years later, it could be in the future, or even the past. And considering Sons of the Forest added 8-player co-op, it's pretty safe to assume that the Forest Free is going to have that multiplayer system still. But there's no release window, there's no Steam page, there is literally nothing. Just a mood-setting trailer. But a survival horror series reinventing itself with a full sci-fi crash landing, I am glad that they're taking the series somewhere new, and I'm keen to check this one out. Next we have game number 7. It was only a matter of time. Total War Warhammer 40k just got revealed, and it's going to have 4 playable factions at launch. Firstly, you've got the elite genetically engineered Space Marines, then the endless chaotic green tide of the Orcs, and the Eldonari, who are known as the Elder Space Elves, with their rapid hit and run tactics. And then the remnants of humanity, the Astra Militarum. Millions of regular average Joes backed by tanks, really just mostly cannon fodder in this setting though. Just like the tabletop though, customization is going to be a core element of Warhammer 40k Total War. So you can personalize your army, you can name your warband, paint its colors, and customize your iconography. But you can also take it a step further, you can modify your faction's combat tactic philosophy with signature army strengths and arcane war gear that changes how you're going to play on the battlefield. But we are talking about the 41st millennium here, which means this game is going to be a galactic scale sandbox of warfare. You can capture planets, you can upgrade fleets, you can manage the war economy, bombard worlds from orbit, deploy armies for ground invasion, and if things get truly dire, you'll be able to unleash apocalyptic weapons to wipe out entire planets. And let me tell you, 40k fans have been waiting decades to finally hit that exterminatus button. The battlefields themselves feature dynamic destruction, new biomes, and faction-specific unit rosters. And that obviously means we're going to see walkers, elite squads, tanks, titans, cannon fodder, which is just troops. The whole ecosystem of 40k warfare. And because we already have the fantasy version of Warhammer Total War, we kind of know what the pipeline for Warhammer 40k version is going to look like. This game's going to get constant updates that add new factions such as the different races of Chaos or the Tyranids into the fray, probably each coming with their own narrative chapter as they're released. I just hope this is everything the fans want. And funnily enough, the little bit of gameplay we do see here, well, it does remind me of Warhammer 40k Dawn of War 4, which I recently reviewed. So you can check out that video, I'll link it below for you. I think that game's going to be a bit more of a zoomed in focus compared to this larger Total War game. And now is also a great time for me to plug my Warhammer tabletop channel that none of you really know about. So if you like Middle-earth battle strategy game, I definitely recommend checking out my other hidden YouTube channel from the link below. But now that brings me on to Game 8. Exodus is shaping up to be the space RPG people have been begging for since Mass Effect 2. And there's a solid reason for that. Archetype Entertainment is stacked with ex-BioWare talent, including the original writer behind Knights of the Old Republic and the first 2 Mass Effect games. So in this new game, Exodus, you play as a scrap scavenger who gets pulled into something much bigger, becoming a traveler, humanity's last hope in a galaxy galaxy ruled by godlike beings called the Celestials. And the central narrative hook is actually pretty wild for this one. Every time you leave on a mission, time dilation means that decades can pass back home. So you actually return to a future shaped by your actions that happened on the mission. Now, gameplay wise, the trailer showed a mix of third-person shooting, traversal, and heavy ability usage, and overall the combat looked pretty impactful. You'll be able to switch up the different damage types with your weapon to deal with the different enemies, and you can also rely on different playstyles like stealth to get through each mission. There'll even be companions that you can add to your crew, and they have their own motivations, which will undoubtedly lead to some tense situations. If Archetype can deliver even half of what's being promised here, it could be the closest thing we get to a successor to the Mass Effect games. Next we have game number 9, and this is a bit of an interesting one. This new game combines the world of Cyberpunk 2077, the parkour of Dying Light, and the Bulletstorm FPS aggression. It's called No Law, and it's kind of a cyber noir FPS game. The pitch is pretty straightforward. Stealth, guns blazing combat, parkour movements, immersive sim problem solving, and story choices that actually ripple through the world from what we've been told. If Deus Ex had a baby with Cyberpunk, but with more of the depressing tone of RoboCop, this is probably where you'd land. The game's based in a location called Port Desire, which is a vertical maze of industrial towers, smog-soaked rooftops, choked alleyways, and pockets of greenery that almost feel calming amongst the chaos. Apparently, you can approach each mission however you want to, sneaking through vents, using gadgets and cybernetics, or going full rage mode, and redecorating entire districts with muzzle flash. But they are pushing hard on the player choice aspect, so you can help someone, kill them, or just ignore them. Everything you do though is going to leave a mark, opening alternative routes and outcomes across multiple playthroughs. They seem to be chasing that element of choice in a straightforward shooter with a solid narrative. And in that sense, this was made by a 24-man team, so don't expect to find the open world of Cyberpunk here. This is more of a contained shooter experience, choice and consequence on a budget, but it's looking good so far. And now we have game number 10. Star Wars Fate of the Old Republic was finally announced at the Game Awards with a cinematic trailer. And while we still know almost nothing, the pedigree behind this game is currently doing all the heavy lifting for me. This is a single-player RPG set in the exact same era as the original Knights of the Old Republic. Not some vague thousands of years ago timeline. This is And the studio leading it, Arcanauts, is headed by Casey Hudson, who is the game director on the original KOTOR game, and also the creative force behind the first 3 Mass Effect games. To me, that says this is the closest thing you're ever going to get to a real KOTOR successor. Now, Hudson has already said that this isn't a remake or a retelling, this is a new story, but built with everything he's learned since those early BioWare days. The pitch is going to be a classic Star Wars RPG, big choices, destiny, and the fight between light and dark. The exact phrasing he used makes it very clear that they're aiming for something that hits the same emotional tone as KOTOR, without being boxed in by the old plots. The trailer shows a Force-sensitive protagonist, lightsaber in their hand, which strongly implies that you're playing as a Jedi, at least at the start of the game. Then there's a quick glimpse of a starship that will almost certainly act as your Normandy-style mobile hub, with a cast of allies hinted at throughout the silhouettes and brief shots. There's no confirmation whether any classic KOTOR characters are going to be returning, which probably means this is more of a spiritual successor than a dedicated continuation of the original game. And honestly, the ambiguity is clearly intentional. The guys know the hype that they're playing with here, and until we see gameplay, we only get hints of a new protagonist, a fresh story, the same ancient era, and the promise of a choice-driven RPG design. But they've got the right team and they're saying the right thing, so it looks promising. And those were my top 10 games of the Game Awards, but we also saw Phantom Master Zero in action again, Lords of the Fallen 2, and a few others that I want to check out. But let me know what stood out to you guys the most.